This is a reading taken from the Founder's Bible, The Founding Fathers, Abortion and the Inalienable Right to Life. The Bible is not silent on the issue of unborn children, making it clear that from the time of conception, human life is alive in the womb. In Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16, David eloquently expressed this truth, specifically thanking God that for you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth, your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. Many other verses affirm that life within the womb is created by God himself. You can refer to Job chapter 31, verse 15, Psalm 22, verses 9 through 10, Isaiah 44, verse 2, and also chapter 49, verse 5, in Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 and 5, and in Luke chapter 1, verse 15. Many today think that abortion is a modern issue, but Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9 reminds us that there is nothing new under the sun, and this is true with abortion. As long as there have been pregnancies, there have been some who did not want to be pregnant and who wanted to dispose of the child before it was born. The Bible therefore addressed this issue, even establishing civil penalties for actions that cause an unborn child to be harmed or killed, found in the book of Exodus chapter 21, verses 22 through 25. 1,500 years later, as the Western world was developing under the enlightened influence of Christianity and the Bible, abortion was still recognized as a crime, for it represented taking the life of an innocent victim, and the shedding of innocent blood is resoundingly condemned throughout the Bible. Referring to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 19, verse 10, 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 5, Psalm 94, verses 20 through 21, Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 and 17, Isaiah chapter 59, verses 2 through 7. Abortion was so thoroughly repudiated that it became a crime under the common law, which is recognized as the basis of law in civilized nations, and which was incorporated into the U.S. Constitution through the 7th Amendment. For you formed me, you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. From America's earliest beginnings, abortion was always seen as wrong. For example, for the first century and a half following our initial colonization, America was under British law, and the policy on abortion throughout that time was explained by British judge and legal writer William Blackstone, a favorite authority of the Founding Fathers. Life is the immediate gift of God, a right inherent by nature in every individual, and it begins in contemplation of law as soon as an infant is able to stir in the mother's womb. For if a woman is quick with child and by a potion or otherwise kills it in her womb, or if anyone beat her whereby the child dies in her body and she is delivered of a dead child, this was the ancient law, homicide or manslaughter. After America separated from Great Britain, the Founding Fathers made a new government, but they preserved the previous position against abortion, a fact made clear by James Wilson, a signer of both the Declaration and the Constitution. Placed as an original justice on the U.S. Supreme Court by President George Washington. Wilson began America's first organized legal training, in which he told law students, with consistency, beautiful and undeviating human life from its commencement to its close is protected by the common law. In the contemplations of life, life begins when the infant is first able to stir in the womb. By the law, that life is protected. American law was clear. As soon as it was known that life was in the womb, that life was protected. In that day, they knew there was life in the womb when the infant is first able to stir. That is, when movement could be felt inside. But with today's technology, it is possible to know within only days that there is life in the womb, from which point that unborn life was to be protected under the law, a historical position repudiated by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1973 in Roe v. Wade. The founders believed that the right to life was the first of the inalienable rights that God had given to every individual. When John Quincy Adams was quite elderly, he reminded the rising generation, ask the Declaration of Independence, and that will tell you that its authors held for self-evident truth that the right to life is the first of the inalienable rights of man, and to secure and not to destroy. That right governments are instituted among men. According to our founding documents, a primary reason that government exists is to protect the inalienable right to life. Interestingly, Americans' position on protecting the life of a child during the time of the founders was quite different from what was practiced in many other nations across much of Europe. It was wrongly believed that parents gave life to their children, so under the law in those countries, parents had the right to take their child's life. But Americans knew that the life of a child came not from parents, but rather from God. Parents, therefore, had no right to deprive an unborn child of its life, as signer of the Declaration John Witherspoon acknowledged. Some nations have given parents the power of life and death over their children. In America, we have denied the power of life and death to parents. Because God himself gave the inalienable right to life, America's early state laws were very clear on issue of parents taking an unborn life, such as the law in Virginia that declared, but if a woman be with child, and any gives her a potion to destroy the child within her, this is murder, for it was not given her to cure her of a disease, but unlawfully to destroy the child within her. America must once again regain the unwavering biblical conviction that not only are we fearfully and wonderfully made by God himself, who wove me in my mother's womb, Psalm 139, but also that the right to life is the first of the unalienable rights of man, and that to secure and not to destroy that right, governments are instituted. John Quincy Adams. We must elect all of our civil leaders according to this standard.